Hello and welcome to our video series on the resurrection of Jesus. In the previous episode, we responded to the second of 7 most popular skeptical theories of the resurrection, and that is the theft theory. In today's segment, we're going to look at the third skeptical theory, namely the conspiracy theory. Let's begin by asking a question. Is the resurrection of Jesus from the dead a conspiracy made up by the disciples of Jesus? The conspiracy theory argues that Jesus did die, but the disciples deceived people into thinking that he was alive. We're now going to look at reasons why the disciples could not have made up the resurrection of Jesus. Firstly, the Jews never produced the body of Jesus. If the resurrection was not true, the Jews needed only to produce the body, and that would have been the end of it. The Jews and Romans were on the same side, so having access to the body was possible. If they couldn't get the body because the disciples stole it, how did the disciples do this? If the disciples stole the body, as discussed in the previous episode, how in the world would unarmed fishermen and peasants overpower the Roman guard, move the stone and take the body? Secondly, the disciples could not have gotten away with proclaiming the resurrection in Jerusalem if it was a lie. The Gospel accounts regarding the resurrection were written in such a temporal and geographical proximity to the events that they record that it would have been almost impossible to fabricate these events. The fact that the disciples were able to proclaim the resurrection in Jerusalem in the face of their enemies a few weeks after the crucifixion shows that what they proclaimed was true. Thirdly, the conspiracy would have been unearthed by the disciples as adversaries. These powerful adversaries, the Jews and the Romans, had both the interest and the power to expose any fraud, yet they could not do it. Fourthly, how could this conspiracy or lie cause such a transformation? Imagine 12 peasants changing the Roman world with a lie. How did they come up with such a conspiracy? Were they the most creative, clever, intelligent fantasists in history? Who sustained them? What made them act? Even when facing extreme conditions like being ostracized, criticized, rejected, persecuted, martyred, hated, scorned, excommunicated, imprisoned, exiled, crucified, boiled alive, roasted, beheaded, not one of them confessed to the resurrection being a fake or a deliberate deception. There is one final thing to be mentioned, and that is that the conspiracy theory, while agreeing with the facts that Jesus died by crucifixion, that he was buried by Joseph, and his tomb was found empty early on Sunday morning, it does not have the explanatory power and the plausibility to make it a successful theory. Consider the empty tomb for a second. If the disciples had stolen Jesus' body, then it would be utterly foolish for them to fabricate the story about the discovery of the empty tomb by women. Given the unreliability of the witness of women in Jewish society, such a story would not be the sort of tale that Jewish men would invent in order to fake the resurrection of Jesus. Also, it is anachronistic to think that first-century Jewish men would intend to fake the resurrection of Jesus. The conspiracy theory views the disciples' situation through the rearview mirror of Christian history rather than through the eyes of a first-century Jew. Remember that we saw in the 6th episode that there was no expectation whatsoever of a Messiah who, instead of establishing David's throne in Jerusalem and establishing his reign, would be defeated by the Gentiles and shamefully executed by them as a criminal. Moreover, the idea of an eschatological resurrection from the dead was just completely unconnected with the idea of the Messiah and was even incompatible with it. The bottom line is that since the conspiracy theory does not adequately explain the 5 facts and for the 8 reasons mentioned above, no scholar today would accept the conspiracy theory. In sum, therefore, the conspiracy theory makes very little sense. It doesn't arise from evidence, but actually it contradicts all the evidence and common sense we have. Thank you so much for watching, and if you do have questions or comments, please let them know. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do. We look at the 4th of the 7 most popular skeptical theories concerning the resurrection, namely the substitute theory, in our next segment. So stay tuned and God bless you.